So we do it again. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Deb.
This is Ed Sahely, everyone. And Ed and I both are Second City alumni, and we have performed and taught there. And when did we meet exactly? What, 100
I
years
think
ago?
we met for good when you were directing the Second City show in London. I mean, I think that's where we really bonded.
Yes, we went to movies, and I had a baby, and I was about to have another one. And I think Dead Poets Society was the thing that that actually ended
Oh,
up.
yes, you took me to that. We went to that movie and I just sobbed.
Yeah, and then I thought, well,
I'm a sensitive boy.
He's a sensitive boy. So, you're a very good improviser. You do it far more
Thank
than
you.
I do. And you're also a fine actor, by the way. You are, they'll see this when they see the video that we just taped. But you also teach, and you've taught improvisers for a long, long time. And just what is the one mistake that when you're teaching an improviser to come in, what is the one thing they forget to do? And then we'll talk about what they should do, maybe.
Well, there's a couple of things that I started more recently, not more recently, but I'm just telling them about status and about, a room has status. When you enter a room, if it's familiar to you, you have high status to the room. If it's unfamiliar, you are low status to the room, which means you have to use all the low status body language of discovering, searching. And it's a great way to set up a scene. And then,
without explaining what you're feeling.
Totally. All you have to do is play status to the room to enter a scene or to start a scene.
Isn't it funny when you watch people, though, in real life and they give status to an object? My favorite thing when we used to move around more was at the subway, when somebody would run for the subway and the doors would close.
Oh, I know.
They'd scream at the door as if the door had all the power over their
Yes, the worst thing ever that could happen to them. Instead of 3 minutes later, you can get the next one.
Yeah, or you get hit in the face by a door, and depending on your status, like I apologize to the door. I'm like, I'm sorry. Well, I'm like this. And other people are like, screw you, door. So we
That's
spill
funny.
coffee, we get mad at the coffee. So that's the thing you're doing now, is you're saying over the years you found that that's a really great way to set the environment.
Set the environment.
Yeah. And when I teach people here, we talk a lot about looking back in memory, and they look back, say, at their family home. But you need to really set up how everyone behaves in that home can show what status each person is in the home.
Exactly.
So what do you think in terms of status? Like, what does it do? Obviously, with improvisers, they have to be in the moment, make a decision because they're performing. But what does that do when they make that decision for a status? Like, how does that help the scene?
Well, when it's between people, I really believe status is a game of what do I need from that other person that keeps me active as a low status person. So the person with high status, one, they're not always mean. They're not always dictators. They are people that just have something you need. So then you behave in a way to fulfill your need.
And I heard when Keith Johnstone, I just got his book again, and he said, people, it's you that's believing the status.
Yeah.
Because, and also people have to grant it to you a bit.
Exactly. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And a lot of new people try to become invisible when they're low status and try to get out of their way. But you got to keep it active. I need something from them, therefore I'm going to behave. A child wanting the keys from their parents to go to the prom, the keys to the car. They will be so nice to the parent. They want that key, so they will behave accordingly.
Yeah, and I think people think of low status as groveling, when it just makes sense to play low status if you've got a power struggle going on.
Exactly.
And the thing that I talked about with them is that status also, depending if you want it to be funny or serious, is how it's contrasted. Like, you can say, I love you, and it's the contrast of what my voice is doing and my intention
Yeah.
that's opposite to the words. And you spoke about that with me a couple weeks ago about
Subtext is
contrast.
everything. Subtext
Yeah.
is everything. And comedic element is contrast, to go from this to this without doing all the transitions.
Yes, it's also pacing, because you can smash
Pace.
those two thoughts together, right?
That's right. And totally flip, so that I really mean to compliment you, and then I really mean to put you down.
Yes,
And
yes.
put those together, and it's funnier than if I have to give you all the reasons why I think this is happening, which is drama's more that. You watch the work between the thoughts. Comedy gets rid of all the transitions, and you have contrast butt up against each other.
I love that. That is the perfect way to say it. One other thing I'd like to add to what you said in terms of writing for the page, you said subtext, but I think what it is you can't do subtext exactly on the page, but you can write the sentence, I love you, she said, and then your subtext or your text after the sentence can be the contrast, like, I love you, she said, gritting her teeth as she passed wind, which means she probably didn't, you know what I mean?
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
No, I don't write like you write. And that makes total sense. You've got to somehow show the contrast between what is said and what is meant.
When we learned Second City, we learned yes and.
Yeah.
And I also learned make people look good, meaning try to make the other performer look good.
Totally.
Is there anything else that before I close that you really felt like you needed to,
well, again, comedy does have a pace element to it.
Yeah.
Not a lot of, I don't want to say not a lot of thought. There is always thought, but it's how am I affecting the person I'm talking to? And am I getting through? And if I'm not, I got to try another way.
Yeah. In the story that Ed's going to read to us, I also thought that those two people, I won't blow the story, but those two people have to agree to be together. Other people would have gone, the woman's quite aggressive, they would have gone, screw off, I'm not going to have anything to do with you. But the reason it's fun is that they both agreed to be in the scene together. And that's what makes it percolate.
And talk about contrast.
Yeah, David Sedaris wants to be a cool New Yorker. She's very aggressive. He could have said, forget it, I'm not going to talk to you. But there was something in her that he allowed into the scene.
Yeah, he wants to play the game.
Yeah. One other thing, and do you agree with this or not, is Keith Johnstone says that everybody plays a status they're comfortable with, but there's nobody that can play neutral status.
I do agree.
Yeah.
I do agree. And yeah, I do think we gravitate to a certain status depending on how we were raised, how we view authority. But then you get to a certain age where it kind of evens out. Now, that's not neutral. Yeah, but there's always this going on between friends. What are you competing about? I like to wear better clothes than my friends. That's a game we decide to play of status. I can afford more clothes than you. And I'm totally lying right now because I can't.
No. I heard this great line, which was in my family, and this is like men and women. It may not be true for all men and all women, but I had a line about my parents is my dad bragged about what he did and my mother bragged about how she suffered. And both of them were playing the status to each other. Like my dad would go, I did this big thing today out in the world. And my mother going, lucky for you, I've had 6 kids. But in a way, they were both playing high status to each other.
Yeah, fighting for status.
Fighting for status. And I think that's the piece that I really learned in improv, that you have to keep moving it forward.
Yeah.
You can't just stand there and be neutral or static.
There's got to be growth. And I talk about relationships in improv too. If we start here and we end there, why have we done this scene?
Yeah, why
if
did we
go here and we're switching status and having an emotional shifts, it's worth watching.
Yes, and for reading, in my case, I've written about my struggles, but if I write it with my filing my nails going, I got out of it okay, and I'm really great now, no one wants to read that. They want to read, did I get out of it okay? I hope I fix it. And I think with our class, what we're talking about is memoir, and you have to go into the thick of it and go, I didn't know if I was going to get out of this, whether it was funny or serious. It was a struggle and the stakes were high at the point that I was living that story.
And when directing kids and people in monologues, it's like if you've started this as if you're not reliving it in the moment. If you aren't doing that, then I already know the ending.
Yeah.
I already know where it's going.
Yeah, I like that. And that's really hard in memoir because you already know you lived through it, but you have to create the reality for the reader to wonder how you got out of it.
We want to live it as you lived it.
Oh, I think that's great. Thank you. That's really good. Thank you so much for coming today, and maybe you'll
My
come
pleasure.
back.
Oh, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.